Let's bring in our family law experts who have been in battles, maybe not this extreme, but battles. Family law attorney Jacqueline Newman is with us, and family law attorney and law professor Randy Kessler. Great to see you both here. Jacqueline, from your perspective, how often is there irrational behavior in a custody battle, whether it's, you know, at the time of the divorce or 4 years later?
Is 100% too much to say? You know, there's always some sort of element of irrational behavior. I mean, custody, as you can imagine, is just incredibly, incredibly challenging for people to fight about. I mean, this is their children. This is their everything. So people can act in a very irrational way. Going to the extent of murder is definitely way more irrational than what I've typically dealt with. But I think it's safe to say that most people are somewhat irrational when dealing in a custody fight.
And Randy, that's why I never got into your line of work. No, it's much safer over in the criminal courts, much safer. So let me ask you, Randy, how do the dynamics change in a case where a couple gets divorced, they have kids, and then one of the exes gets remarried and starts another family?
So I think you hit on it earlier, right? That she's going to throw him under the bus. There's a lot of that. There's a lot of the new spouse feels threatened by the former spouse. The former spouse is always going to have a connection to the new spouse, you know, to the wife, because they had children together. You marry somebody and they had children with somebody else, they had something that you'll never have with them. They had their firstborn, their secondborn, and there's some competition, there's some threat, there's, you know, it depends on the individual. So that's not a good recipe if people cannot be mature enough to say, I know what I'm getting into, this is a woman who's got children, and I'm good with it. If he wasn't good with it and he felt threatened, certainly she may say, he didn't like my ex, and he did it on his own. He knew I didn't like him, but I would never want my ex killed. So that may be the defense, that may be where it ends up, because you hit the nail on the head, Vinny. There's a lot of that animosity, and that often causes more litigation. I'm going to stand up, and I'm going to one-up the other side and show that she married right this time, that the first one was the mistake, and I'm the right one.
Are there signs, Jacqueline, when you can tell in a case, like the other side is getting, you know, a little, I don't say the word dangerous, but again, getting back to that irrationality, can you tell in the middle of a litigation as an attorney whether your client or the one on the other side, you know, something's a little off?
You can often tell to some degree, and that's why it is so important to keep safety first. And it's one of the first things I say to my clients all the time, especially when they're announcing they want a divorce. We talk a lot about safety plans because you don't know how somebody's going to react. And then when you're in the midst of the divorce, and as we said, people can act incredibly irrationally, you want to make sure that people are in safe environments. You know, keeping people sometimes living in the same house, that can be very, very destructive, and, you know, and very triggering, obviously, for everyone. So it is really important to have, you know, when they're represented by an attorney, and if you're in a position where you think that they're making threats or they're really kind of acting so out of the norm that you're scared for your client, you need to communicate with the attorney and make sure that your client stays safe.
Now, one of the factors here, Randy, that's a little different than most is the divorce is in 2018. The murder isn't until 2022. I mean, there's a lot that happens in between. These kids are growing, the twins are growing up. Obviously, they both have gotten remarried. Are you surprised in the allegations here of one ex plotting the murder of another ex 7 years later?
I am not surprised. I would think 25 to 30% of our business is post-divorce interaction, enforcement of custody orders, collection of past due child support, modification of the terms of parenting time. People, you know, I think half the time people say this was a good divorce, it worked out, we're both happy, and half the time it's not. And my numbers may be off, but there's certainly a large portion of people that get divorced that it doesn't solve things for them, it doesn't solve their feelings, and they still want to get back at the other. And the other half of the time, or 60 or 70% of the time, people move along, you know, but certainly this is not rare, these kind of feelings.
And Jacqueline, that's why around the holidays you really like to relax, right? Because everyone's in such a good mood on both sides, right?
Oh, yeah. I always say in Christmas, nobody likes, a summons in their stocking. Yes, it is a very, very difficult time. Obviously, holidays are very difficult. The beginning of school right now is a challenging time because people are adjusting. I know something, I read, and even in this case, people were fighting, this couple was fighting about where their children were going to go to school a month before school was beginning. So, it was obviously incredibly acrimonious. I think it did continue even after the fact. And you don't know what everyone's influences were, and what they were fighting about, but they obviously continued to fight and the anger remained.
So what's the secret, Randy, after all these years? What's the secret to get adults to be rational?
A lot of good therapy, a lot of good family support, and sometimes space. Just, put yourself in the other side's shoes. Do something nice. Think about 5 years from now, how would you like to think back about how you acted and how you handled this adversity? If you can get out of your instant skin and say, myself 5 years from now would look back at this and say, you handle this the right way. That's what you got to do. Not everybody can do it. Not everybody gets therapy. Not everybody has good family support, but we recommend it all the time.
All right. Jacqueline Newman, Randy Kessler, awesome insight. Thanks so much. We'll see you again.